Sitting here in the 2020s, it's easy to forget how little Star Trek there actually was when Star Trek The Next Generation first premiered in 1987. There were only 3 seasons from the 1960s original show, a short-lived cartoon from the 70s, and a handful of feature films and a few movie novel tie-ins. The Star Trek galaxy that now feels so infinite, full of timelines, captains, continuity debates, was back then mostly just Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. Then The Next Generation arrived and redrew the map. This wasn't Kirk's Enterprise Part 2, this was a whole new philosophical take on what it means to be Star Trek. The tone, the look, the moral scope, everything modern Star Trek stands for was built here in Season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation. Sure, Season 1 was clunky and the dialogue was a little awkward at times, the shiny 80s spandex looked kinda silly, but it also dared to be bold and ask the question of what does the future of the future look like? And that question changed everything. Stick around while I make the case for why Star Trek The Next Generation's first season, despite its infamous behind-the-scenes chaos, was actually pretty great and should be remembered better than a lot of fans give it credit for today. Let's start by talking about the heart of the show, the new USS Enterprise 1701D. In the original 1960s show, the Enterprise was a bit more rugged, a bit more militaristic, hard angles, tight corridors, stark lighting, but here, in The Next Generation, the ship redesigned felt welcoming, the exterior of the ship had no hard edges, it was all curvy, it was good looking, and even when we look back at it now, it still looks pretty damn futuristic. When we saw it again in Season 3 of Star Trek Picard, it still looked futuristic and it still looked great. This is a design from the late 80s that still holds up remarkably well today. The bridge, the command center where the captain and the officers make all the important decisions, looks like a professional office, calm and efficient, not a tense war room. The curved archway behind the captain is elegant and functional. There are no knobs or buttons. Everything is a smooth touchscreen display, which we take for granted in the 2020s, but in the late 80s that was pretty cool and pretty new of an idea. The crew quarters look comfortable, like apartments, not harsh military quarters. Here's a small but clever detail that I don't think was ever actually mentioned on screen, but that I like and that somebody had to think of back then. And that's when the camera is looking straight at Captain Picard on the view screen and they're talking back and forth between Picard and whatever alien adversary they're facing, you see the person on the view screen facing forward. But when you get a side camera angle from one of the bridge officers, for example, you see the character in profile on the view screen. It's projecting a true 3D image, not a 3D illusion like glasses when you go to a 3D movie now, but an actual 3D image inside the view screen. So if you look at the person from a different angle, you see the different sides of their face. That was amazing. That was brilliant. And it's never talked about on screen, but somebody had to think of that for Season 1. Another innovative touch on the show was the ship's counselor, a character named Deanna Troi, who's essentially a psychologist sitting right there on the bridge. It's a show about long space voyages filled with danger and discovery. This acknowledges the importance of mental health, dealing with stress, loss, trauma. Early on, her lines were a bit corny and obvious. She felt feelings, but her character grew over the show. But the idea of her being there in the first place, even if it wasn't handled perfectly in Season 1, was actually very well thought out and very interesting and a good new direction for the show. Something that I wish they leaned into more on the other shows and even on this show. Overall, this isn't just a military vessel zipping through space, it's a floating community complete with families on board, schoolrooms for kids, lounges for relaxation. The ship reflects an advanced, evolved human society that's moved beyond the constant conflict of our own time for the exploration and scientific discoveries. Visually, unlike many dark, gritty science fiction stories of the time and of today, everything on The Next Generation was brightly lit, clean, and sterile. It paints a picture of a future that's not only possible, but we would want to live in. Part of the appeal of Star Trek is seeing a future that you'd like to visit. These elements of Star Trek are almost taken for granted now, but this stuff had to be thought of, designed, and implemented, and it all happened in Season 1. People tend to focus on the things that Season 1 got wrong or hadn't fully developed yet, but Season 1 does not get enough credit for how much it got right. Season 1 shines when it embraces big ideas, big character moments, and that sense of cosmic wonder. Instead of recapping every episode, let's highlight a few key moments of the show to explain and highlight why it really worked as well as I think that it did. Take the very first episode, Encounter at Farpoint. It had to introduce everything. The new ship, the new crew, the new era. We meet Picard, who's a calm and intellectual man, his first officer, William Riker, charming and adventurous, a little bit like Captain Kirk maybe, Data the android, who wants to understand human emotions, Worf, a strong warrior from the Klingon race, and again, humanity has evolved. Humans and Klingons are no longer absolute adversaries. We have a Klingon on the bridge. In the original series, we got a Russian on the bridge during the Cold War. Klingons were originally basically supposed to be a stand-in for the Russians as an allegory. Now we have one on the bridge here, showing that peace can be achieved. We get Geordi LaForge, the blind engineer who sees through a high-tech visor device, security officer Tasha Yar, and Dr. Beverly Crusher, the ship's medic. And then we get Q, a godlike being who puts humanity on trial for its past barbarism, its past violence, asking if humanity truly has evolved. And this is a lesson for us, is a reflection of what we are today. Star Trek is supposed to show people who are better than we are, something to be aspirational, something we can look up to, and that's a good thing. We want our heroes on television and fiction to be good people. We want to look up to folks, and a lot of fiction has anti-heroes, and I'm fine with a good anti-hero. I love Deadpool. I think anti-heroes can be a great mechanism for storytelling, but we also just need regular old heroes, people that have ethics and are willing to risk everything to do what's right, and this show gives us that. It's a bold setup, blending action with philosophy. Through this, the episode shines by showing us a future where diplomacy and ethics win over fighting and arguing and war, sparking hope that humanity might actually be able to learn and aim for the stars. And that's basically the running premise of the entire show. Each episode, to a greater or lesser degree of success, tries to present a problem that an enlightened, ethical crew made up of good people can solve. Another standout episode is Where No One Has Gone Before. The Enterprise gets flung to the edge of the universe by a mysterious alien called the Traveler. There, thoughts become real. Imagination shapes reality. It's poetic, it's full of awe, and it emphasizes that curiosity is just as important as actual hard science. Space, time, and thought are not the separate things that they appear to be. It also hints that young Wesley Crusher, the Doctor's son, has a lot more going on, and he might just have a special destiny, which is kind of neat. It gives us something to get presented to us bit by bit through the show. This episode wonderfully captures Star Trek's heart, exploring not just space, but the potential of humanity itself. Characters shine in episodes like Data Lore. We meet Lord Data's identical but evil twin android. Brent Spiner plays both characters flawlessly, showing that he's actually a really good actor. It showcases how is it nature versus nurture, what makes people that are absolutely identical good versus evil. It's wonderful. It's well acted, it tells a good morality story, and it's also a mirror for humanity today. We can choose one path to be like Data, ethical and good, or choose another path to be like Lore, selfish and evil. Data is a fantastic character that gives us an outsider perspective looking at humanity, and that's basically, again, that's what Star Trek is. It's an outside look at humanity, whether it's from the eyes of Q or Data, or just these characters that are superior to us ethically because they've lived a life that is moral and good, and that shines through in the way they interact with each other. Now that leads me to the famous Roddenberry rule. Gene Roddenberry, who was a secular humanist, I'm not, I'm a Christian, but Gene Roddenberry was a secular humanist who believed that humanity could be perfected, and he thought that in the future, there would be no more interpersonal conflict, that one day humans would learn to evolve beyond that. So he did not want the writers to create conflict between the characters, which pissed off the writers because that's where you get conflict from. Stories thrive on conflict, and if your characters can't have conflict, how do you write a story? It forced them to do interesting and new things. Some of those things worked, some of those things didn't work, but it was a good foundation for what the show ended up being in its later seasons. For a mix of tech and emotion, there's 11001001, a title that just rolls off the tongue. Alien beings called the Binars, twins who speak in binary code to each other, take over the ship to save their planet's data. Meanwhile, Riker falls for a holographic woman, simulating a person so real that it's heartbreaking when she's erased. It's a romantic tragedy showing how future tech can create deep connections, In the real world of today, smart AI, this is something that Star Trek predicted and is kind of coming true now. People can become attached to artificial intelligence, and that's not always necessarily a good thing. In fact, it probably isn't. Human interaction is better than human-computer interaction. Also, I really wish that Star Trek gave us more of the Bynars. It's a tragedy that they were only in this one episode. One of my personal favorites is the Arsenal of Freedom, where the crew goes up against an ancient automated weapon system stuck in an endless war. It's tense, it's clever, critiquing how technology can outlast its creators if you're not careful. It gives great moments between Picard and Crusher, hinting at their chemistry that would develop to a greater or lesser extent in the later episodes. Vincent Chevalier as a guest star was also awesome in this. He was a great actor, and it's nice to see him guest star in this show. It's just a fun little episode. It's classic Star Trek. Justice gets a lot of hate, but I actually like this one a lot. It's the episode where people that aren't really wearing any clothes go jogging a lot, and Wesley Crusher breaks something and is going to be sentenced to death, but they can't allow that to happen because it's unethical. But there's the Prime Directive, where they have to obey local laws, and Picard decides to break the law to save Wesley Crusher, and it's actually a rather interesting morality play. It's a classic Star Trek setup, although the costuming is kind of hilarious. It's a decent enough episode. It gets too much hate. My absolute favorite episode of this season is The Neutral Zone, the last episode of Season 1. It shows people from the 20th century having been cryogenically frozen, waking up in the 24th century, where greed and money are just a thing of the past, and they have a hard time acclimating to the present. Picard has to deal with them, and he doesn't really like the interruptions, especially from Oppenhaus, the greedy capitalist who wants a copy of the Wall Street Journal to see how his money's doing. And there's a confrontation with the Romulans. It's the first time we see the Romulans in this show. It hints at the Borg because there's big attacks happening on both sides of the neutral zone. It's just a great episode. It's a great character moment, and it's fun because we see the 20th century people being taught about the 24th century from the 24th century characters. It's a great storytelling tool, and it's just a fun episode and a great way to close out Season 1. Of course, not everything lands perfectly in Season 1. The show has its misfires. I won't mention Code of Honor. You can Google that one yourself. It's an infamous episode. Star Trek The Next Generation episodes from Season 1 have all kinds of different ideas that are presented more or less well. Some episodes are good, some episodes are not so good, but it established a television series that is absolutely iconic to this day, and Season 1 set the tone for the entire rest of it. I think it deserves a lot more credit than it gets because it gets a lot more right than it gets wrong. Let me know in the comments what you think. What was your opinion of The Next Generation's first season? Hit that like and subscribe button, and if you want to read a science fiction novel, I have Death Siren available at Amazon.com. Eric Wilfred Watson signing out.